Mistakes in medical records have very profound impact on US healthcare system. 70 billion in denied claims, 55 billion in patient lawsuits. So we charge based on number of patient records that we
Hmm.
process, and we also charge per number of physicians and providers and in general platform users who will go to use the tool. In 2019, I decided to leave corporate and start my own vendor in the space because I've seen very clear demand for simple automation tools that relies on different skill set of tech talent to implement them than what was available on the market at that time. The CFOs are the first to essentially feel the impact of documentation errors on the performance of a hospital or healthcare system.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. Today, I have a very special guest with me on the podcast, Dimitri. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ruben. My big pleasure to be here today.
Thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciate your time. Can you tell the audience a bit about what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is work done, and what are you trying to change in healthcare?
Thank you, Ruben. I'm founder and CEO of WorkDone Health. We
Hmm.
are a company fresh out of Y Combinator in Silicon Valley that looks for issues in medical records in real time,
Hmm.
ensuring quality assurance. We automate the workflows of reviewing charts that healthcare providers do manually today in quality, in compliance, in coding, and billing. And we do all of our compliance checks and rule checks in the moment new record is being created in EMR.
Okay. And let's say I'm a hospital CEO and listen about this. So can you walk me through like what happens? I come to you and say like, hey, I want you to come to my hospital. Like, what are the things that I would expect? Like, how things would be before work done, and how things would be after work done.
What's about the current process? It's reactive. You start looking at the records, not the moment they are created, but when your teams have time for that.
Hmm.
When either physicians can prioritize documentation over care, or when dedicated teams have capacity not only to do firefighting, but to proactively identify issues. So you learn about them, documentation gaps. Maybe it's a missing PHQ-9 score. Maybe it's a missing node. Maybe it's inconsistent node, or maybe there's a conflicting data between different nodes. Let's say nurse node says left shoulder, doctor node says right shoulder with the same issue. That's what you do today. Once you find the issues, you start to address them in old-fashioned way. People making calls, sending emails, chasing each other, providing guidance on how things needs to be improved. If we're talking about, let's say, long-term improvements, or just firefighting when we found that there's patient safety risk and someone needs to intervene and figure out what's the right thing, left hand or right hand. We observe the clinical workflow through documentation, and we run all new EMR data against 5,000 different compliance rules. They come from a variety of places, from CMS and Joint Commission to custom rules that hospitals create for their current quality initiatives. What's different with work done? We do this analysis on all records, not
Hmm.
on the samples, and we do it in real time. So what you as a CEO of a hospital need to carry away from the discussion is that we give you a superpower of connecting AI to your medical records. So everyone in quality and compliance and coding is always on top of what happens inside each records, what issues or gaps could be there from patient safety risk to billing codes.
Hmm.
And you're provided with guidance, not only your CDI team, but also the physician who created that record are provided with the guidance and ability to create addendums and fill in the gaps in a timely, prioritized manner. Let's take an example of SEP bundle compliance. That's one
Hmm.
of the cases we are working now. You as a sepsis coordinator spend significant time monitoring adherence of actions to the measurements,
Hmm.
and you do it today manually. Sometimes your workflow is triggered by some automated monitoring of, let's say, lactate, or by a physician ordering a bundle.
Yeah.
But the rest of your work is pretty manual. You look at the records trying to find the evidence, either evidence of performed actions, or you want to find documentation that is ready for the reporting and from a compliance perspective. Our system does it automatically, so we can allow sepsis coordinator to stay on top of everything and really spend their time addressing systemic issues when people need to be educated, when certain new rules or goals needs to be introduced to improve the adherence, when you design new quality matters.
Gotcha. And how common is this problem, like documentation errors? I will not talk about it. I want to hear about it from you. Like, do you have like any numbers or studies about documentation errors in the hospital?
Surprisingly, it's very limited public knowledge in this domain. It's not
Hmm.
something that typically chief medical officers are not very open to discuss if that's a problem in their hospital. But you know who's the right person to talk about that? A CFO, because they will see the impact of documentation errors in the first place. Out of all denials for insurance claims,
Hmm.
90% happen because of the incomplete documentation.
Mm.
So if you know that upfront, even before the billing team opens any chart or starts building a claim, you are prepared for that. Likely the issue is addressed, and because of that, you will see the decrease in rate of denials. The CFOs are the first to essentially feel the impact of documentation errors on the performance of a hospital or healthcare system. That's the first avenue. We also see the need for the service coming from situations when incomplete documentation becomes a basis for awarding a patient lawsuit. We
Hmm.
work now with one health system where a big issue are missed 12-point assessments. Many clinicians treat 12-point assessment as a more admin task rather than quality of care task. But
Hmm.
each time there's a patient lawsuit and the records are open, the key missing, the key document for acquired versus existing condition is missing. And it pretty much will make the court award the lawsuit to the patient. Mistakes in medical records have very profound impact on US healthcare system. 70 billion in denied claims, 55 billion in patient lawsuits. We're not talking about CMS penalties, failed joint commission reviews. In terms of once we dig into in the patient level, we can see that depending on the maturity of quality and CDI processes, you can expect something between 40 to 150 errors, gaps, or missing data points in the hospital patient discharge documentation. It's pretty significant number. Some of these mistakes will make it to denied claims. Some of these mistakes will make it to quality of care. And our goal is to prevent it, is to eliminate the need for any manual review and keep the resources currently allocated to this process on solving the gaps and addressing the gaps.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think documentation errors, especially like in the US, because like that document, the documentation, the main purpose of documentation beyond physicians or like healthcare providers communicating with each other is like it's a billing tool. It's that's why it's very important, especially adhering to like for example, when I'm writing a note, there are specific things I have to mention in my note. Otherwise, the billing gets rejected if I don't mention that I did this. I for in the old days, for example, I think now it's not required, but one of the main requirements was like to do review of systems and ask the patient about like different things, or like do a physical exam and document that so a physician get paid. And I'm sure the same thing applies for procedures as well or other things. So I completely agree with you. I think like documentation is like it's a billing tool before a communication tool, unfortunately. And from what you are explaining to me, I think this fulfills. I have two golden rules for anything to sell in healthcare. One, it saves lives. Two, it saves money. So I think this fulfills the second golden rule, where it saves money and it brings more profit to the hospital. Is that right?
That's right. So we can see the billing rate improvement up to essentially 50% of what was being missing because of documentation mistakes. Some things will still fall through the cracks in terms of addressing them. That's fine, but the impact is very clear. It's purely financial. Currently, as we talk to quality teams and CDI teams, we tell them that the tool will pay for itself pretty much, because the documentation pretty much is something that connects the patient care with the payer. In the end of the day, completes the revenue cycle management. And if you have any gaps in that communication, they will have profound impact on essentially end of the funnel in our situation.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And How is the business model like? Is it a monthly or yearly subscription? Is there like installation fee? If I'm a hospital CFO and listening to this and I want to bring this to the hospital, what do I expect?
So we charge based on number of patient records that we
Hmm.
process. And we also charge per number of physicians and providers and in general platform users who will go to use the tool. Scanning medical records against 5,000 compliant rules is pretty complex computational task. And because of that, the solution carries some initial investment in the implementation. It's less about customization. It's more about the moment till before you start and the moment before you will see the first benefits, let's say 30 days or so, unless we're talking just about the improved reporting, that will be an investment. But after that, we currently work with hospitals and clinics who pay us on a monthly basis, some on annual basis. But the impact on the billing rate will be so significant that you will see that solution pretty much gives you the quality part and CDI part as a bonus for to the return of investment. The major return will come from the improved billing rate. And also, it will be faster billing rates. One of our early customers, they typically found mistakes like 6 to 8 weeks after the mistake happened
Hmm.
from a quality assurance service by the billing provider. And there are two disadvantages to that. First of all, okay, that's a long billing cycle. Your documentation should be ready and QA checked by the moment the patient is discharged, not 6 weeks after that.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
also, because we can spot the gaps that possible to address only when the patient is there, for instance, missing depression inventory. How
Hmm.
would you assess how someone felt 2 days ago? You cannot ask them the same questions. But at the same time, from the documentation perspective, the PHQ-9 score was higher than I think 12. That's a trigger for depression inventory, and it's not there. Now it's a gap from billing. Likely the payer would not award the claim in full, or maybe the claim will be denied completely. That's really depending on the on the specific situation. Um,
Gotcha. And tell me, how did you end up trying to solve this problem? Like, tell me a bit about your educational background and how did you end up want to solve this problem?
I'm a physicist by training. I do have a master's degree in physics, but
Hmm.
also I spent my entire career automating um, enterprise compliance processes in highly regulated industries like banking or insurance and some healthcare as well. And we came through major technological breakthrough over the last few years to be able to automate greater compliance tasks because a lot of compliance work deals with unstructured data. Medical records are example of those. And I started to look after exiting from my previous company where in compliance the improvement can provide the biggest return on investment. And
Hmm.
that's typically in highly regulated industries. I've looked at healthcare from the perspective of payers in the first place. I know that payers invested a lot in building solutions to automatically approve claims.
Hmm.
And automatic approval, you can look at that differently. It's automatic denial at the same time. It's essentially a crossover of two different streams. They have army of people building the automated approvals, which means they develop technology to look at medical records on different layers to identify all specific to them compliance issues. Again, draw to approve, but you can look at that differently. And started to think with my founders and the founding team of AI engineers, where in the world that support to providers is coming from. Providers now, they are essentially in between two different AI technologies. One helps them to create records, scribing tools. One is used by payers to check the records for any compliance deviations. And in between are providers.
Yes,
And
that's right.
they are essentially left alone at that moment. And we started to build for compliance as an original use case, not quality of care, not improved billing, but just improved compliance. Like we want to make
Hmm.
sure that when the Joint Commission comes in, they found the same things we found when we scanned all the records before that. Or maybe
Hmm.
we did it 6 months ago and we already implemented quality initiatives to address some systemic gaps. And by now, when the Joint Commission opens the records, they will see less surprises. And then we started to see that, okay, by looking into records, we also go into quality of care domain. We also go into revenue cycle management domain. Original case was compliance. And again, it was coming from deconstructing the current strategic environment in the market where payers already use AI and some documentation is being created by AI as well.
Gotcha. Um, can you tell me a bit about your previous company and your venture, like in compliance? How was that like?
So first of all, I spent 6 years with Ernst& Young, and we did a lot of different work across industries, including internal audit and compliance automation with this very complex global firm, implementing what's called robotic process automation, RPA, machine learning technologies,
Hmm.
classification algorithms, and so on. That's where I've learned enterprise automation. That's where I got experience of implementing that in very big organizations. In 2019, I decided to leave corporate and start my own vendor in this space because I've seen very clear demand for simple automation tools that relies on different skill set of tech talent to implement them than what was available on the market at that time. And this company is called Electronic Robotics. We scaled it very quickly. We were just 5 people in 2019. By late 2021, we had around 250 employees
Oh,
across
wow.
many countries and clients in around 50 countries of the world. And still now, Electronic works on a daily basis in all countries of Western Hemisphere except of Venezuela, and Cuba probably as well. And that gave a lot of exposure to what's being automated. Sorry.
Gotcha. And your background, you mentioned it's in physics, right?
That's lasers, yes, quantum electronics, one of the
Can,
most interesting what's called experimental physics applications.
can I ask you like, how you ended up from physics into this, and then like, how do you end up? Did you end up like teaching yourself coding, or like did you take courses? Because like you're going from physics to enterprise compliance and healthcare. Like it's a wide range of expertise.
I think education in STEM in general gives you very good ground for whatever you want to do in life. You pretty much trained complex problem solver.
Yes.
When you work on experimental science like physics and like
Hmm.
lasers, you also learn to design experiments that will be learning points for you. And that's very similar to building early stage ventures
Yeah.
because you need to think about you have very limited resources and time. What do you want to prove? You want to prove value, you want to prove that your technology works, you want to prove that what you're building is scalable. These are all very different things that require you to think through stages of experiments, the data you used. Usually data is coming from customers in the end of the day. And I think there's a lot of similarities between being trained in STEM and being an entrepreneur in the end of the day, if you're an extrovert person like me.
Okay, that's fair. Um, can you tell me a bit about your customers? Let's go back to the hospitals. Um, when a CFO comes to you, what are usually like the metrics they want to improve in their hospital? What are the things that they want to improve?
Number of denials, percentage of denials in dollar volume,
Hmm.
lost post lawsuits,
Yeah,
billing cycle. What's your time to get paid? And
gotcha.
that these are very painful points for many hospitals. Like when I talk to another health tech entrepreneurs or to some, let's say, advanced in their understanding of technology physicians, doctors, investors. There's a lot of conversations about how automation now helps hospitals achieve their goals in
Yeah.
finance, for instance. But in reality, no more than 10% of hospitals use AI tools for anything, including revenue
Oh,
cycle management.
100%.
A
100%.
lot,
Yes.
a lot of this work is still very manual. And the first thing I would say that all the coding work and coding prep will be done before the first person from your team opens their computer in the morning. That's a fundamental change for where the workflow starts. The workflow becomes essentially a quality review after AI conducted their work. And In our demos, we usually try to impress people with the depth of understanding of, let's say, if it's code, why we need to use one code versus another one. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just opinion coming from a black box. It should be opinion supported by references to payer rules, to regulatory rules, to specific policies in the teams. And speaking of numbers, the last CFO I met, it's around 350 bed hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say that between 7 to 8% of all their revenue is being written off every month because of the denials.
Wow.
That's how much it is. And at the same time, if you look at reasons for denials, we did it for them. Things like timing mismatches
Mm-hmm.
that are, I think, important, but at the same time, they treat it on the ground floor very differently. In our clients, there are smaller clinics in substance use disorder rehabilitation space, for instance. We can see from the mistakes we found that sometimes details are made up by nurses, which probably is just a result of how their work is organized. But when you look from payer perspective at documentation, it looks like the same patient was sleeping at the same time on group therapy in the same time, had a visit with a doctor, and payer would just deny this claim. We will
Mm-hmm.
try to prevent the situation before it happens.
Would you say so? Right now, there are so many articles talking about like how insurance is using AI or insurance companies are using AI to deny claims. Would you say that work done is the antidote for what the insurance is using to decrease that rate of denial?
That's very good words. I like the framing that as antidote. Yes, that was the first kind of inspiration of being that shield that could protect providers from evil AI used to deny. Quite frankly, more I spend time in the industry, more I understand the motivation of different players. And I think that payers, in majority of cases, sincerely interested in documentation come and clean up these mistakes. They
Mm-hmm.
do have big investments in review teams as well.
Mm-hmm.
They need to assemble these big teams of physicians. And they will pay for many of these small mistakes anyway, or missing pieces of documentation. They will get everything they need, but for them it will be a longer process that from one side looks like they will pay longer, so they will make more money. But in fact, they carry this lot of this overhead in their own peer reviews that essentially makes them more efficient if they can automatically approve a lot of things. So I think that in the end of the day, it comes to the point that clean documentation is beneficial to everyone, for payers as well. So I don't see this as like poison and antidote. But at the same time, if your counterparty is already using technology that fundamentally changes the way documentation is treated, like in the past, some small details were buried under layers of documentation. No
Mm-hmm.
one will find them, no one cared. People violated some of the compliance rules, specifically knowing that this would never be discovered, and they believed that there was no impact on quality of care, so they treated that as a check mark that needs to be done. But now, with this different approach, the standard for compliance and documentation went significantly up. And in this regard, to keep up with this increasing standard, we're given the kind of antidote to the current situation, to this kind of hidden crisis to a certain degree on documentation quality.
Can you explain to me like how does the tool work? Does the AI run like on daily or weekly basis, or does it run automatically after I sign my note and there will be a prompt, hey, like for me as a physician, you're missing XYZ detail. How does it work?
Currently, it works in real time. As soon as a new record is created in EMR, it sends a signal, we call it signal, to our system telling there's an update that
Hmm.
triggers our system to go and get access to this data,
Hmm.
take it and start what we call compliance check. We'll
Hmm.
check rule by rule,
Hmm.
a very long list of rules.
Hmm.
And each time we find deviation from compliance, we will use more AI to validate. We want to make sure there's no false positives. It's really kills the user experience.
Hmm.
And once it goes through, in our case, triple layers of validation, we'll surface up the gap, and you as a physician will receive notification if that's type of the gap that requires your immediate attention. We don't want you to overwhelm, we don't want to overwhelm physicians with
Hmm.
small things that distract them. We want to make sure that if we communicate something in near real time, that's very important. If these are less important issues and could be addressed outside of 24, 48-hour window, then you will get a prioritized list in the end of the week or however it's set up by our buyers. Sometimes the check, you don't need to make the check every hour. But if you're doing step one bottle adherence improvement project, you want to check it every 10 minutes or so. So it really
Gotcha.
comes down, the timing comes down to what specific use case, what specific problem you want to address with AI.
Gotcha. And just like one of my fears, and you mentioned that is like we don't want to bring more work, unnecessary work or notifications to the provider. And it sounds to me like there is a way of prioritizing this to like urgent and things that can wait.
Yes, and that's one of our intellectual property IP things is how we do the prioritization. And prioritization, the initial algorithm is one thing. More important, how well you capture the feedback loop from physicians. Do
Hmm.
they agree that it's a priority that needs to be addressed within 12 hours, 24, 48 hours? Or do they think that this is a mistake that really has zero impact? And we recently conducted the research looking at around hundreds different mistakes types. And we classify them into four categories: high patient safety risk, high financial impact. It's number
Hmm.
one category, should be priority. Usually, sometimes high patient safety risk could mean different things. Like if patient is in the hospital and there is no allergy documentation, that's one level of risk. If there is no allergy documentation, but the patient is discharged, likely like today, they don't face any specific health risk. So that's different prioritization. But then as we do the initial prioritization, it's up to the clinician to decide what the real prioritization is. So they can provide the feedback when they see a topic, saying, okay, this needs to be closed. In another kind of taxonomy of mistakes, there is category four, which is no safety risk for the patients, no financial impact. These are like pretty much grammar mistakes, would be a good example of that. But grammar mistakes could be different. They could be misspelled drug name or
Yeah, for
drug name
sure.
that looks like two different drug names. We want to address that. We want to make sure that there is no problem there. One of the most surprisingly for me, as I started to do this research, mistakes in the first category of high patient safety risk are units. Like when you have the same quantity in the same note mentioned in different units, like milliliters,
Or
units,
milligrams per
what
deciliter or milligrams
milligrams.
per liter.
We want
Yeah,
to make sure at this moment, we from provider perspective want to make sure that this is really a mistake, documentation mistake, and this is not a real workflow mistake, which could be dangerous. So that's how it works. We have a long-term vision of being a Grammarly for medical documentation when you find these issues before you even click on submit the record.
gotcha. I want to switch gears a bit and talk about like the company's history and how it was shaped. You guys went through YC, and can you tell me like how did YC really affect the company's product, the MVP? How did it affect the trajectory of the company, or was there an effect from YC on a healthcare startup?
Absolutely. And I think it will be contrary to what some people think. So YC is about mindset in the first place. Mindset of being in front of the customer, understanding the customer pain points, and in the end, as YC mantra says, building something that customers want.
Hmm.
But at the same time, um, YC is also a community of founders building technology products. So if you're building something for those people who build technology products, you have big advantage because you are among your potential users and customers. Even your fellow batchmates, startups in the same kind of maturity that you are, could be your customers. It's not the case for healthcare companies, apparently. But at the same time, YC has so much momentum in terms of its brand name that when you go public as a YC company, there are health providers that track that and they come to you and they say, you're building exactly what I want to build or similar. Or maybe even not. They may say, like, hey, what you're building maybe is already built by someone, you just don't know about that. And this feedback loop with the right mindset gives you enormous advantage of early market validation and making sure that you prioritize those features who are the most valuable for the customers. For instance, we engaged with the first health system
Mm-hmm.
immediately, like the next day after we did public release. We became HIPAA compliant like early May. We went public. What's called YC launch. It's when you appear in YC social media. There are millions of followers. Some of them belong to the industry, and we met this this provider. We signed BEA agreement, which is required from HIPAA perspective to work with their real patient data. A few days later, we got access to big big sample of patient charts, anonymized, but real patient charts. And these charts have been reviewed before by the CDI team in this hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So when they gave us the charts, they knew upfront what mistakes are there. They found them early.
So they
So
were
we were
testing
able,
you.
yes, we were able to run POC where we demonstrated them. We find roughly 50% more mistakes, which itself is very impressive. Some of these mistakes are important. Some of them belong to patient safety risks domain, like conflicting data in different nodes. And that made their certainty in working with us, the conviction in working with us much higher. And we were able to start working with them being, 3 months into the market, which is very, very short period for a
Oh yeah, in
healthcare
healthcare,
company
3 months
usually.
is like super fast. It's the sales cycle in healthcare is like a year to 2 years. It's super fast, 3 months.
Yes, and that's pretty much my goal as the CEO of the company now is to prove that with what we build, the sales cycle could be repeatedly quicker.
You mentioned also like we became HIPAA compliant immediately. Can you expand a bit on this point? Like there are lots of tech startups who are going to healthcare and then they were like, oh, like let's put our product out there. People are going to use it. And they don't really think about like the importance of being HIPAA compliant early on. Can you walk us through the process? Like, what does HIPAA compliant mean? Did you guys go and like hire a third party company, or did you build a specific structure into your website for those? And how much important it is to get your first customer in healthcare?
Ooh. A lot of questions. Good thing it's the topic I understand well. So when you're building in software as a service space, or when you're building for the healthcare
Hmm.
organizations, you need to be compliant with certain standards. And this is not like when people think about security, they think about firewall or antivirus. HIPAA and SOC 2 compliance, which is also required to work with US companies, understand security and compliance much broader than just your essentially IT security. These are policies that exist in your organizations, from hiring to separating with people,
Hmm.
training them, how well they maintain security in third-party apps they use, and so on. There are
Hmm.
many rules similar to us. Compliance is a number of rules that you need to adhere in order for other companies to trust you with their data and their patient data. What do you do as a company to become HIPAA compliant? First of all, you need to put policies in place.
Hmm.
Second one, you need to make sure that the rules are adherent.
Hmm.
Then you need to make sure that your product on the architectural or design level meets the standards needed for HIPAA specifically, how you process the data. Do you de-anonymize it in the process in that moment or not? How it works. And when you're early stage and you take care of all these kind of architectural things, it's much easier because your product code base is small.
Hmm.
So if you're really convinced that you're building in healthcare, you'd better get HIPAA compliant very, very early and
Hmm.
even spend more time on that maybe than on something else, because you would be ready not only for commercial projects, but working with real patient data on POCs like we do when we take samples of patient charts to prove the quality. Very good thing that currently there are IT tools for
Hmm.
startups like us to make the navigation through compliance with all the standards easier. First
Hmm.
of all, they have rules inside them. Second one, they can automatically connect to your systems to monitor the compliance. For instance, everybody should have two-factor authentication on their email accounts, everybody who
Hmm.
works for a company. Otherwise, you're not HIPAA compliant. Um, so you can do it like in the past when we got SOC 2 compliance from my first company, you really ask people to send you screenshots, or you go to the system, take screenshot from there, upload it. Now you just connect into your passport system, sources a lot of this data automatically. from your Gmail account, from your banking accounts, from different places. Um, Policies, they are usually standard like generators of policies that if you need, and find some easy example to relate. Um, how do you separate with your employees? What documents you collect when? How you make sure they don't have access to the previous accounts? It's you need to have a policy about that. The policy needs to be known and it needs to be shareable. And you can of course write one or take it from your fellow company or hire consultants. But usually these modern IT tools for compliance, they come with all these templates of documents
Templates,
already being
gotcha.
there. So we decided that to acquire the first commercial client, having HIPAA is absolutely necessary. We are not the tool that makes some simplifications of like processing back office data or something. We're not coding catalog. We really look into the patient patient charts. So for us, HIPAA was critical, and I think the investments paid off well. You use IT team, you use IT tools. You can hire a consultant who is more experienced and could help you to address the questions. And at the end of the day, you hire a third-party audit company
Hmm.
that comes, they have access to the same tools that you used. They do the review, they can do the code review when it's necessary. They look at your architectural diagrams and your policies for data processing and data storage. And then they produce final report that says you're either compliant or not. Um, SOC 2 compliance, I think in general, is harder because it's built in a way that there's type 1, type 2 compliance. Type 1 is similar to HIPAA. You get it audited and you have a report. You can show it to everyone. But then it should be continuous audit for a certain period of time every year. It's called type 2 compliance. And that's where you require continuous investments to make sure you adhere to the policies.
Gotcha. Um, my last question to you, I don't want to take more of your time. In 2 years from now, where do you see work done? What is the future like?
Building high performance compliance solution requires you to build the best AI model and fine tune it for the specific test of processing medical records at scale.
Hmm.
Just think about this. When there's a new record, you don't only ensure this record is compliant, but you're looking for, let's say, conflicting data between this record and previous records. You compare allergy documentation between this record and previous records. There are hundreds of pages of records that need to be processed in near real time. So it's a very complex tech task, which requires you building and customizing your own LLM model. In 2 years, I want to have the best model under the hood that can enable high accuracy in real time at cost that is manageable. If we do that, we become not only the product that is in demand, we become a feature to connect to your systems and products to enable these compliance checks in an efficient way. I want EMR vendors and HR vendors to knock on our door asking for access to API of their products so they can essentially provide the same services that we do, but to their users in real time, just inside their products, which I think will be the best physician experience in the end of the day. Not to use any new tool at all, but like Grammarly users today who use Grammarly
It's an
see the
invisible
grammar
tool in the
check.
background.
Exactly. And I think that physicians would love it given how much they love tools like Ambient scribing tools.
I love it. Dimitri, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time, and this was very insightful. And I'm very excited to see what the future brings to work done. I will keep an eye on you guys, and you are really doing a great job. And I think this is the real antidote that we need right now in healthcare, especially with all the AI going on right now, insurance to deny claims. We need to have an AI to make sure that we are documenting things right and we are not denying any claims for our patients.
Thank you. I think we should put the antidote into the name of the session.
I like it. All right. Thank you so much, my
Thank
friend.
you so much. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye bye.